Oh.
Got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're on to chapter 22 on the Midah of Another in page 152 in the Feldheim edition of Mesilat Yesharim. We're going to explain now these divisions, the components of Another. And this is now the first man. Another Makshaba. What is, so he said before, Another breaks into two parts. One is the thinking, the mindset, and the other is the action. And this is unique to Another. We didn't have this issue by the other character traits. But this is a very big issue where he said that if you try and pretend, if you try and act out Another without the right thinking, you're in big trouble. It's not going to work. It says, in fact, it's the worst of all the possible characteristics that you can have. We talked about that last week. So another makshava, what is the humility of thinking? Shi'itbonen ha'adam, the person should think, yitamet etzlo, and realize how true this is. Asher ein tehila or kavod v'lo. There's no praise or any kavod, honor that's fitting for him. Kol shehen lehitnaseh, all the more so that he should elevate himself. He should be conceited. I don't know, conceited is a good translation. How does he translate that?
Superiority.
He should have any superiority on any other person. Why is this? What is lacking from him by default. Now, we've talked about this before, but it's important to appreciate here. Now, remember, this is the lowest level of the understanding of humility. We're going to get into much deeper levels or more elevated levels in the second and the third man. But nevertheless, even within the first man, there's no idea of humility being self-deprecating. The Western world's concept of humility is to put yourself down, so that if you are, so if someone says to you, "You're smart," you know, really, I'm stupid, right? All kinds of things like that, right? You're really good looking, really ugly, right? Etc., etc., etc. Right? That's the Western idea. It's epitomized by a statement by Winston Churchill, who was talking about somebody with a friend, and the friend said he's very humble, and to which Winston Churchill replied, "Well, of course, he has much to be humble about." So the idea being that he's got a lot of issues, right? And that is antithetical to anything Jewish, any Torah concept. We don't put ourselves down. We don't think badly of ourselves. We don't deprecate ourselves. That's not humility. That's not meaningful. It's counterproductive. It's a shanda. It's a terrible thing to do to yourself. Right? In fact, I'm in the middle of doing a new video talking about this whole concept, but it's very negative. And unfortunately, it's very much the Western world thinking to put people down. So what is he saying here? Right? He's not saying to be self-deprecating. If you notice very carefully the language, he just says there's nothing to which you can elevate yourself. You're not better than anybody else. There's nothing wrong with you, but there's nothing exemplary either. There's nothing for which you can say, "Oh, look at me," right? And that's the key distinction that he makes. And unfortunately, I think many people read the Mesilat Yesharim here, and they think he's saying that you should put yourself down. And you can see how you could read. I think you could see how you could read it that way. But that's not what he's saying at all. He's saying there's nothing to which you can elevate yourself above people. Why? Because of what you are lacking, not what you are bad at, not your faults, but that you have nothing to which you have no implicit virtue. Not only because of what he already has, his capacity, his how does he translate that? Not because of what he has already accomplished, but also because of what is lacking from him. Because it is simple. For it's impossible for a person, but in madrega, in any level, no matter how great you are, that he should be without any, whatever level of perfection he has achieved, that he doesn't have many lackings. Not that he's a bad person, but you whatever you're going to say about anybody, whatever you're going to say about yourself, let's just use an innocuous concept. You're an artist, a musician, right? A simple example, right? No matter how great a musician you are, you're never perfect. You never get to the level where you don't make any mistakes. There's always more to achieve. You never get to, like, that's a good example. Parenting. You're not a bad parent. Just you could be a better parent. And those are two very different ideas, two very different concepts. We don't go how bad we are. We go, I could have done that better. Right? There's always room to improve. And there's a very important distinction that we have. Is that making sense? We're good? Right. Shelo yubo chesura rabim. Right. Or mitzativo, or not because of what he's achieved, but because of his very nature. Or mitzad mishpachato krovov, or from his family or his relatives. Whatever's going on your well, there's always things that you can that take away from your greatness. Or mitzad mekarim shekavot, or because of the very things that happen to him, the various incidents, whatever happens to us in life. Or mitzad, or because of his actions. She'adam ain't tzaddik ba'aretz asher yoseh tov lo yachateh. There's no such thing as a tzaddik. There's no such thing as a tzaddik who does good and doesn't make a mistake. Right? There's lots of things. In other words, I always like to. Oh, Billy. Billy's joining us. Welcome, Billy.
I think she's still connecting.
He's trying to connect. Story of my life. Hey, Billy, welcome. So, riding a bicycle is a good proxy for this concept. Right? No one ever rode a bicycle by the first time they got on the bicycle. You end up learning, end up riding a bicycle because there's many times you get on and you fall off. Ain't tzaddik ba'aretz asher lo yeteh. There's no such thing as somebody who does the right thing, who succeeds without messing up in the process. Now, if you think for a minute, and this is very much a Western concept, that it's possible to do the right thing and never mess up. Eddie Cantor, famous actor, comedian, big in the 1930s and 40s, I believe. Jewish.
20s.
What?
20s.
20s. I date myself. So he's very famous for this line that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. So in Hollywood, they want you to believe that, highly successful people are just born that way. Like they always, because when you make a movie, I don't know if you've ever seen them in the process of making a movie, it's the most painful experience. Well, not the most, but it's one of the most, because there's no such thing as the actors get on the set and they just shoot the movie, and they're good, right? Each scene is repeated over and over and over again till they get it just right, and they go to the next scene. They've said those lines over and over and over again, and a lot of people just won't do it. Like there were actors who were doing well, and they just quit because it's nowhere near as glamorous or meaningful as people think it is. It's just a very boring, you're just saying things that, first of all, not true, and just to create a certain effect and a look that is not real. So but the problem is that it gives people the impression that, like I remember as a kid, I forget who it was, but there was a tennis player when I was a kid who was really big. So it inspired a lot of my generation to go out and play tennis. Bjorn Borg, I think it was. I forget their names now. But and so like tennis was it, right? We all went out and played tennis, and we soon learned it's not as easy as they make it look. Because by the time they get on the court on Wimbledon, they've been practicing that same move. I used to have a student who was a concert violinist, and he told me that even when he's touring, even the piece that he knows well, like he's been doing this for years, he has to practice 6 hours a day, the same piece over and over and over and over again, right? You've heard me say this many times, right? Everything on this planet is born doing one thing really, really well, at least, right? Squirrels climb trees, cheetahs run 45 miles an hour, eagles first time out the nest, 60 feet up, perfect, right? Human beings are born incompetent, and it's downhill from there on. Nothing personal. Some of my best friends are human beings. But we're born, there's nothing that a human being does with any degree of perfection. Even when
Except messing up.
Except messing up. Right? That's exactly right. Right? Even when you pay somebody millions, literally millions and millions of dollars, right? And all he has to do is swing the bat to hit a ball. He can't get it right every time. I wrote a book a while ago, the Wind book, and a friend of mine suggested that would help me is to read Hogan. I forget his first name. He's a famous golfer. I'm not into golf at all. But he told me to read his book. Is it Larry Hogan? I forget.
Yes. No, wait, he was the governor.
He was the governor. It was Hogan, something, Ben Hogan. No.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I don't know. So anyways, a famous golfer. I never heard of him. So I read the book, right?
Yeah, Ben Hogan.
There's Ben Hogan. Okay, good. Thank you. So I read the book, and one of the most painful experiences I've ever had. This is a guy who writes, a whole chapter on how to hold a golf club. I mean, anybody who has an issue with how we put on tefillin needs to read this book. Because the details of how you put on tefillin are very precise. You go this way, that way, this, everything's got to be, right? Tremendous detail. So people read it, do it, and they go, what difference, like 7, 8, whatever. What do you call up in the details, right? See, he's going into a whole chapter. You've got to hold with the pinky this way, and just touching the top of the left pinky is going to touch the right thumb, and it's going to, and you're going to, it's a whole big deal on just how to hold a club, right? I don't remember all the details. It was painful. It was painful because it's complete nonsense. Now, but I did get one great idea out of it. And that is, he says this point, you can have a professional golfer be doing the same thing. All a golfer does is a few moves, and he does them over and over and over again. By the time they're on the tee on the PGA Tour, they've been practicing that move for hours, right? And it doesn't matter. It's not like tennis. It's not like golf. It's not like baseball or anything else where you're dealing with the unpredictable. He's got a club that he knows. He's on solid ground that he knows. and he's trying to hit a ball that he knows, and he's been doing that same move for years. Nevertheless, Hogan says when he swings, it's completely unpredictable how that club will hit that ball. No two moves are exactly the same. Right? See, here we are, we're human beings, and we cannot perfect our actions. It's just not possible. We are born, we are built to mess up. Ein tzaddik asher lo heteh. There's no such thing as a human being that doesn't mess up as part of the process. Therefore, messing up is part of the whole concept of what we're supposed to be doing. It's not learning how to ride. It's not riding the bicycle that's the goal. It's the learning is the goal. The process of learning how to ride is what perfects us, not getting to the end goal. That's not what it's. The end is sort of secondary to the whole goal, which is the process of messing up. And therefore, if you live in the Western world, and the whole Western world is all about being perfect, because that's the God that they pray to, and that's the whole emphasis in the Western world, is you should be perfect, and that's what they show movies about, and that they emphasize and they portray this concept of perfection. So when you live in the Western world, you can't help but have tremendous self-hate, because you know yourself, right? You're nothing like that, nothing personal. But we're not. Well, that's not our existence. We don't live achieving. We don't live in any kind of perfection. We're constantly messing up. So that's not a deprecation. That's just the nature of who we are. That's how we exist. That's the process. That's the ennobling feature. The tzaddik, like the little kid trying to learn the bicycle, the tzaddik is the one who keeps getting up, who keeps trying. Therefore, the falling is not an indication, an indictment. It's part of what the process is all about. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to fall down. Yes.
Question on the word that they're using here is hate. Is hate normally used to indicate a mistake versus something that one does purposely? Because I've always seen hate, translated as sin.
Yes, right. That's one of Noah's famous concepts. That he said that I add a little bit to it, which is the Christianity is composed of three streams of thought: classic Jewish ideas like love your neighbor like yourself, classic pagan ideas like the gods can have relations with women, right? And classic Jewish ideas that they got wrong. And one of them is this: the man sins. So they translate it as sin. And Rav Noah has often pointed out that's a bad translation. Chet doesn't mean sin. Chet means mistake. So he uses an example in Hebrew. If an archer shoots an arrow towards a target and he misses the arrow, the language that we use is hu hotet. He sinned. Right? Obviously, it doesn't mean he sinned. It means that he missed the mark. Right? He wanted to get there, but he got here. Like he missed. And that's what it means. We miss. It's impossible to get through anything without messing up. Now, this has a very important role in marriage and parenting as well. Because anyone who thinks that you're going to have the definition of a happy marriage is you don't make mistakes, is going to be sorely disappointed. I've been doing marriage counseling now for 30 plus years. I never met an unhappy couple, right? They're all disappointed. They're not unhappy. How can you be unhappy, right? You're 45 years old, right? You've got all your teeth. You live in an air-conditioned house. You have heating in the winter, 3 meals a day, right? All your kids survive childbirth. You survive childbirth. You can't be unhappy with that, right? Anyone prior to 100 years ago would give their back teeth for such a thing, right? You're not unhappy, right? When was the last time you had to draw water from a well, or go wash your clothes by the river, right? Not this week, maybe last week, right? Like, you can't be unhappy with your life. You're not unhappy. You're just disappointed. You thought that you'd go through marriage and you get it right, and your husband or your wife would get it right, right? No, marriage is about getting it wrong and then learning and growing and figuring it out and perfecting yourself. The mistake is you get resentments. Like, you build up resentments. I shouldn't have to tell him. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have all these other things, right? I shouldn't have to change diapers either. But no one else is going to do it. So that's the name of the game, right? So you see, you don't have resentments to your children. There's a big mistranslation in one of the great verses in the Torah that is widely mistranslated. Is V'ahavta l're'eh kamocha. You probably heard of this pasuk, right? V'ahavta l're'eh kamocha. So it's widely mistranslated. How would you normally translate that? Anybody?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
V'ahavta l're'eh kamocha.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Right, that's the mistranslation. What's the correct translation?
Love the other.
Re'echa really is kind of friend or neighbor. Come on, don't answer all at once. Take a number. We'll go alphabetical. Oldest to youngest.
Well, Hill said it differently, right? He said, whatever
Right.
your neighbor hates, don't do for your friend.
Right. That's the net meaning of the pasuk. So Rav Noach asked a question on that. He said, we've got a pasuk, love your neighbor like yourself. I mistranslated that. Right, love your neighbor like yourself. So Hillel comes along and says, what does that mean? Don't do unto others as you would not want to have done to yourself, right? So God's not good enough for you?
Well, I don't.
Like God said, love your neighbor like yourself.
Where did he say that exactly?
What's that?
Where is that said exactly?
Love your neighbor like yourself.
Yeah, but is that in the Torah?
Yeah, right. Parshas Kedoshim.
Okay.
Right? Love your neighbor like yourself. Right? You understand? So he said, what does that mean? Don't do unto others. God's not good enough? Why didn't you say love your neighbor like yourself? Why do you have to come up with a new way of saying it? Oh, the newfangled thing.
Because not everybody likes themselves.
So he says, Rav Noach said, because every generation they got different ears. They weren't hearing that. It didn't work for them. It didn't resonate with them. So he had to say it in a way that resonated. That's the job of a rabbi, is to communicate the Torah in a way that it resonates with people. Every generation is different. They didn't hear that anymore. It didn't speak to them. So he changed it. Right? But what's the original pasuk? V'ahavta l're'eh kamocha. It's not love your neighbor like yourself. It is, and you should love your neighbor like yourself. What's the and there for? What do you mean and? So if you read the pasuk, it says, I should pull it out. It says, don't bear a grudge and don't take revenge against the children of your people, and you should love your neighbor like yourself. Right? You understand? So you see, right? Why don't you bear a grudge? Why don't you have any resentments towards your children? Right?
You don't expect anything.
That's definitely part of it. Or part of it is you expect these things to happen. You see, why do you love your kids?
Because they're yours.
That's true. You see, but the Torah tells you know the reason you love your kids? Because you don't bear a grudge and you don't resent them. If you don't bear a grudge and you don't resent them, you will love them. You see, when you're first married, you love your spouse. What changed? Resentments. If you don't, you see, people think if my husband or my wife would say something so I wouldn't resent them, they would have really apologized. Or if this didn't happen, then I would love them. No. It's not on them. They'll never find the words that you'll get over what is bothering you. And the proof is children. Right? What do your children have to do so you don't resent them? Basically nothing. You know, I had a woman, she called me up, I think I told you this story, and she said, I need to get a divorce. And she told me all the things that her husband did. And they were very serious things. They weren't small things. But at the end of it, she expected me to say, you know, yeah, you're right, you should get divorced. But I didn't. So she said to me, I said to her, imagine your daughter-in-law called you up and was complaining about her husband, your son. And you look at the list, and it's the same things that your husband was doing, right? So I asked her, would you resent your son? She said, absolutely not. Right? Would it change your relationship with him? She says, absolutely not. I said, your husband's done all these nice things for you, and I listed off some of them, right? Your son, what has he ever done to earn your tremendous devotion and commitment? She didn't blink an eye. She said, absolutely nothing. So I said to her, right, it's nothing to do with your husband. It's because you're holding resentments. You want to get over it, you get over it. Right? You can work this through.
Some things can't be gotten over.
That's true. I'm not saying in every case, but most of the cases is that you can, right? So about 6 months later, I saw her again. She said, you were right. I should have listened. Right?
What does that mean? I should have listened. You mean she went ahead with her divorce?
She went ahead with the divorce, and now she's single, and like she's trying to find someone. And I said to her, like, I say this to people all the time, like, who do you think you're gonna find? You know, there's not everyone. There's no tzaddik, right? Doesn't make mistakes. They all make mistakes.
Yeah, but there are mistakes and there are mistakes.
Yeah, I understand there are different scenarios, but nevertheless, right? Nevertheless, 90% of the people get divorced. We believe in divorce, but 90% of people divorced shouldn't be getting divorced. And it's not even the 90% that are getting divorced, right? The 90% of the people who are married should be in bliss.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 90% of the people get married shouldn't have gotten married.
Oh, I won't say that. Actually, I should say 100% of the people who are married should be in bliss. What I meant is 10% are already in bliss. The other 90%, right, should be working on themselves. Right, but the point is, so the point is, right, this.
Wait, Zita has a question.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, what is it? Like, why do people hold on to resentments? Like, what's the benefit, right? Because like people don't do something unless there's a benefit.
Yes. See, David Melech explained it beautifully. He said, better to suffer at the hands of God than the hands of man.
Oh, we always come back to that.
That's the core, right? Better to suffer. So the pasuk is telling you, by the way, what it's saying, right? Don't bear a grudge, don't hold resentments, and then you will love them, right? V'ahavta l'reach kamocha is a consequence. You will love people who you don't resent, you don't bear a grudge to, right? Stop resenting them, and you'll love them.
But really, the only way to stop resenting them is if you really, truly believe in God and you believe that whatever's coming to you, regardless of who it is, it's coming from God.
Oh, very good.
Keep coming back to this. Okay.
We keep coming back to it, right? So King David said, better to suffer the hands of God than the hands of man, right? Why? Because I always give the example. Your deer hits your car, right? Do you have resentment towards the deer? No. Billy does.
Billy's like, yes.
Right? You don't.
Well, I don't resent the car.
You don't resent the car, right? This is one of those things that happen. What are you going to do? Like a drunk driver hits your car. Oh my goodness, you're fuming. How dare they do such a thing? I can't believe it, right? You're as mad as anything, right? Same amount of damage, but it's a different cause. One is the hands of God, the deer. The other is the hands of man. But isn't everything the hands of God? 100%. What's resentment? When you don't see it, it's the punishment you get for not seeing that what you're going through is the hand of God. If you don't see what you're going through as the hand of God, right, then you're going to have resentment. And resentment will eat you up alive and chew you out and spit you out, right? That's what resentment is. You're not seeing as the hand of God. If you see it as the hand of God, right, including your spouse, they're also the hand of God, right? Including your children, including your next door neighbor, right? Including the pain in the neck rabbi that you might happen to know, right? Including him.
Few of them,
right? Then you're going to have resentments.
But Rabbi, aren't you saying that people aren't responsible for what they do?
So you cut out there at the end.
I said, aren't you saying that people are not responsible for what they do?
Oh, sorry, yeah. No, they are responsible, but they're not responsible that you're the one that they did it to. Right? They can choose to do whatever they want to do, but whether it's going to affect you, whether it's going. I was just speaking to a rabbi. His son is in the army, so he told me a story that his son told him, and I think he wished he didn't tell him. But he was in the front line in Lebanon, and he kind of dozed off a little bit, and he wakes up to the sound of gunfire. They're shooting at him, right? The Hezbollah is shooting at him. So his son said, if I hadn't dozed off, I would have been in the position where they would have killed me. So thank God I dozed off. I slouched a little bit, and the bullets missed me.
Wow.
Right? So he says it's obviously an ace. Right? In other words, the guy who decided to shoot him, he had a choice. And I think he got his just desserts that day. Right? The Israeli army came back in full force. So he could choose to shoot the guy, but whether his bullet's going to hit, that's up to the Almighty. Whether it's going to what's going to happen to you, that's up to God. You can't affect somebody else unless the Almighty wants you to have this.
But I think what you're also saying is that doesn't mean that you don't attempt to make the world a better place. Like there was a group of women that, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that got together and would, try to change laws and make sure that, people that were driving drunk would get the maximum punishment, or whatever the word you want to look for, so that this sort of thing wouldn't keep happening, because they would just get a slap on the hands.
Yeah, no, 100%. We're enjoined to make a positive difference in the world, 100%. But whether that's going to have an impact, like a great example is the Warsaw Ghetto, right? The Warsaw Ghetto was a disaster, right? So the same disaster, people say this idea you should learn from history. The same disaster should have happened in 1948. They were facing the same kind of odds, overwhelming forces in 1948 in Israel as they were in the Warsaw Ghetto. So, but in one, the Almighty saved, and the other one he didn't. Right? See, there are places where you've got to make an effort, and this is the appropriate thing. And the places where it's not going to get you anywhere. Knowing the difference is key.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So let's just finish this paragraph. Hen kol ele mumim b'adam she'enu manichim lo makom lezel klal. So to all the faults of a human being, they don't give him a place to how does he translate? Elevate, become conceited. Right. To raise himself up above other people. Even if a person should be of incredible character traits. Right? Even though he has it, these faults will suffice to dampen himself. Right? Every human being is born. Our job in life is we're all born with certain issues that we have to conquer. One person might be angry, one person might be I don't know,
mentally slow.
Insensitive, what?
Mentally slow.
Slow, or might be I don't know. Everybody's got different. What would be some other ones? Insensitive. Right? We're all born with a perfection in the world that we have to conquer. Our part of the world. There's a famous Gemara. One of the Roman soldiers came up to one of the rabbis. He said, "You guys don't believe in God." Right? So the rabbi said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's nothing more perfect than a baby. The baby comes out the womb, that's it. That's as good as it's going to get. Right? And what do you guys do? You cut a piece off. Right? Right? You think, what are you doing? Perfecting God." So the rabbi said, "Oh, very good." So he said to him, "What do you eat? Right? Wheat from the field, right? Or bread from a baker?" Obviously bread, right? So what is he saying? The gap between wheat in the field and bread on the table is massive, right? You can't compare the two, right? You come home on Friday night and your wife puts some 3 stalks of wheat under the challah plate, or 2 stalks of wheat, right? You're going to be very disappointed. What's this? Well, it's the new recipe, right? Back to nature, right? You're going to be very disappointed. So it doesn't work. So on the one hand, the gap is enormous, but on the other hand, it's not hardly anything at all. It's true you did a tremendous thing by taking the wheat and turning it into bread, but you can't do that with a pebble. In other words, what you took was something that had the potential to become bread, but it's not that you did that much to it relative to what's already there. The DNA of the nature of wheat is such that it's capable of doing such a thing. So relative to what's already there, the genius that's built into the kernel of wheat, what you did is relatively nothing, right? So too, that's how we see our world. The Almighty created us with something a little off. Our job in life is to fix that little piece that's missing. This is how we know that Mashiach's coming. Is because every generation is given, no matter how good you're going to get it, no matter how great you are, no matter how perfect you live your life, you're going to have children who are going to have issues too, and their issues are going to be a step higher than your issues. How do we know this? Because the issues that you dealt with are nothing like the issues your parents dealt with. Right? We wouldn't think of going to our parents and asking them for help on the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, because it's just not in their realm. They didn't have to deal with these they just don't get it. Like, there's certain principles that maybe you can converse with, but an awful lot of stuff, we're in a different world. If you do your job right, your children will be dealing with issues that you could not conceive of, that didn't exist when you were struggling and figuring things out, because it's the next level of perfection. At a certain point, it's going to perfect the world. We're going to get there. That's why these movies that recreate history are complete nonsense, because the people who were in that generation were not thinking like they think today. They always put, Oppenheimer, they put them in like it's 21st century people pondering the meaning of existence like 21st century people do. They weren't thinking like that in the 1950s. No, it was early 1940s. Right? They weren't thinking like that. And if you read the literature of the time, you see that. Each generation has a different level of perfection. And that's the job. That's what we have. That's our purpose. That's what we're supposed to be. It's not because we're deficient. It's not because we're bad. It's because we're given a problem to solve. Right? It's like you got a math problem. You're not bad because you haven't solved it. That's part of the process. You're not self-deprecating. Right? It's just there's nothing for which to elevate yourself. We've got so much junk that we've got to fix. How can we possibly say? The only way you can think that you are better than anybody else is to deny the junk you're dealing with. Now, that you see a lot, unfortunately, in the Western world. They're into constant denial. They don't admit to their own mistakes. Someone was talking to me. So they said, how come, I don't want to get into politics. How come they're indicting Trump and they never indicted any previous president? So I said, because the system's corrupt. So, how can you say it's corrupt? So listen, even if you love all the other presidents, you're telling me in 210 years, 200, whatever the number, 250 years, right? There hasn't been a crooked president. You seriously think that? They're asking, like, how come in Israel they indicted all these presidents and prime ministers and some of them went to prison? So I said, because the Israelis think that the Western world believes in justice. So the Israelis want to show off to the rest of the world that they're as good as them. So they think in the West that they do take it seriously. Right? They're just crazy, right? So we're going to take it just as seriously as that. We're going to indict these guys, right? Well, how come they're indicting them, right? Well, obviously they're innocent. No, they're not innocent. It's just no prosecutor would ever think of indicting a president. They would never do such a thing, right? It's not because they're so honest. It's because they just don't do it, right? It's a corrupt system. They just won't go after people who are crooked. You become the president, that's it. Now, listen, if the guy was a mass murderer, they might change their mind, but they're not going to do it. So, but nevertheless, you see this amazing thing, right? With all the presidents, with all the congressmen, with all the senators, you won't get anyone who stands up and says, you know what, I really messed up. Once in a while, someone will say something, but they don't. No, everyone's perfect. You walk into the Congress, right? They're all perfect. They're all wonderful people. And come on, it's ridiculous. Right? So they're into a tremendous amount of denial. We don't admit our mistakes. We try and hide it. They put a tremendous premium in the Western world to looking the part. That's the pig. Right? It looks kosher, but really it's treif. When you live in a world like that, you get an awful lot of psychosis, right? And the worst is the Jews. See, the Gentiles don't have a problem living a dual life. The Catholics have been living a dual life for 2,000 years. It didn't bother them. The Jews can't live like that. They have, if whatever the issues they have, it has to be public. They can't live like that. So you drive everyone crazy. You have to admit whatever you are. Why do you have to admit? Just do it privately. They can't do it. Jews can't do it. They have to come be open about it. Anyway, we get off our topic there. Anyway, so that's the first man on humility. He goes on a little further on this first man, but we'll get into more next week. Thank you, everybody. Welcome,
Thank you.
Robin. All the best. Take care.